If you could only eat one last meal before you died, what would it be? Death row inmate Lester Leroy Bower Jr. chose baked chicken, mashed potatoes, mixed vegetables, black-eyed peas, cornbread, sliced bread, and oatmeal bars, with a choice of water, tea, or punch to drink. This is Death Row Diner. We're going to start the night before by taking 1 pound of dried black-eyed peas, put them in a bowl, and cover them with water. In hindsight, I should have covered them with more water than this because a day later they'd completely absorbed almost all of it. Then, the day of, we're going to do the last part first and start with dessert. For the oatmeal bars, we're going to be doing oatmeal fudge bars from a recipe that my mama used to make. In a large bowl, sift together 2.5 cups of flour, 1 TSP of baking soda, and 1 TSP of salt. Stand mixer. With the paddle attachment, mix together 1 cup of softened butter and 2 cups of brown sugar. Once it's smooth, add 2 eggs, one at a time, and beat until combined. Add a splash of vanilla and allow that to mix as well. Then slowly add in your flour mixture. And it wouldn't be oat bars without oats, so once all that's mixed together, slowly add in 3 cups of quick cooking oats. Just keep beating the dickens out of it until it all comes together. It's a metaphor for life, really. Then butter a 13x9 baking dish, dust a little flour on it, and then spread 2/3 of the oat mixture along the bottom, which is going to be a lot harder than it looks. Might have to call in reinforcements from old Smashburger Sally here, which actually worked a lot better. For the fudge part of the oatmeal fudge bars, we're going to be doing a double boiler situation here. So get a pot of water, bring it to a simmer, and put a metal bowl on top, ideally one that's not going to be touching the water. We're going to be using the heat from the steam of the water to melt down 2 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips into 2/3 of a cup of sweetened condensed milk with 2 TBSPs of butter and a pinch of salt. Always a pinch of salt. Stir it together as it continues to melt, and once it's fully melted, add in a splash of vanilla. Looking pretty fudgy. Next, spread the fudge mixture over the bottom layer. It doesn't put up as much of a fight as the oatmeal layer did. Speaking of which, take the remaining third of the oatmeal mixture and dollop it around the fudge layer. Squish them down a bit, but it's okay if there's still some fudge showing. Then bake it in a 325-degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes. When it's done, it should be just slightly golden brown. Wait for it to cool, then cut into bars. Cornbread's a little simpler. Just mix together 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of yellow cornmeal, 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar, 3.5 TSPs of baking powder, 1 TSP of salt. Mix together, then add a cup of milk, 1 large egg, and 1/3 of a cup of melted butter. Whisk together, then pour into a greased 9-inch baking dish. Then bake in a 400-degree oven for 20 to 25 minutes. When it's done, it should look nice and golden brown. Baked chicken is pretty vague, so we're just gonna make a little spice blend for it. We're gonna start by salting the chicken all over just to make sure it gets an even brine. Then to a small bowl, add some paprika, garlic powder, Italian seasoning, white pepper, and black pepper. Mix together. Then sprinkle all over your chicken. You can do this as far in advance as you want. The salt in particular has more of an effect the longer ahead of time you do it, so we're doing this now about an hour before we start cooking. Next, we're going to start with the black-eyed peas. Take 8 ounces of bacon. Now you want this bacon to be thick, as the kids say, and dice it into small pieces. Then take 3 or 4 ounces of some sort of smoked sausage. I'm using a Spanish chorizo here, and give that a dice as well. In a Dutch oven, add your diced bacon and a little bit of water. It may seem counterintuitive to add water to bacon to make it more crispy, but in doing so, as it starts to heat up, it'll help render out more fat evenly, and the water will evaporate anyway. So the result is theoretically more crisp, evenly cooked bacon. Once the bacon's mostly cooked, add in your sausage, and continue to cook for a few minutes, stirring occasionally. When everything's looking good and crispy, turn down the heat, and then add a couple cloves of crushed garlic. Mix it in and allow it to cook for a couple minutes. Make sure to scrape the bottom of the pot to get any of that fond that's stuck on there back into the mixture. Then we're going to drain our black-eyed peas out of the soaking water and pour them in. Add 5 cups of chicken stock, 1 TBSP of tomato paste, salt, pepper, a couple bay leaves, and some Cajun seasoning. Bring to a boil, cover, lower the heat, and let simmer for an hour to an hour and a half. For the mashed potatoes, we're going to be using these yellow flesh potatoes. May also be called Yukon Golds. I don't know if that's technically what they are, but they're probably pretty similar. I prefer not to use russets for mashed potatoes. It's the one thing russets aren't particularly good for, but what do I know? Anyway, peel and large dice them, then put them in a pot and cover with water. Don't forget to salt the water. If you want the salt flavor to penetrate the potatoes, you may as well salt the water that they're cooking in. Turn on the heat and bring to a boil and let them cook for 20 to 30 minutes or so, however long it takes for them to be soft and fall apart when you poke them with a fork. Chicken's going in a 350 degree oven for 20 to 30 minutes as well, however long it takes to reach an internal temperature of 165 degrees. At this point, our beans have been going for an hour, so we'll remove the lid and give them a stir. It's still looking pretty liquidy, so we're going to remedy that in 2 ways. 1, increase the heat so that it boils more vigorously, which will cause more water to evaporate, and it'll reduce the liquid. And 2, we're going to take a cup or so of the beans out and mash them with a fork into a fine paste, which we're going to stir back in, which will also help thicken it. Off camera, I ended up doing this a few more times because it took a while for the liquid to become more thick. For the mixed vegetables, we're just going to use frozen mixed vegetables here. We're going to keep it simple with everything else going on. Boil them in water for a few minutes. Salt the water too if you want them to have flavor. With our potatoes done, drain them. Then we're going to add in a couple TBSPs of butter and a big splash of milk. Some people say not to use a hand mixer for mashed potatoes, that it tends to make them kind of gummy. I do find that to be the case if you use russet potatoes, but using these yellow flesh ones, I find that's not a problem at all. This is a super quick and easy way to make them super smooth and super creamy. Now that the bean liquid is thicker, we're going to remove the bay leaves, and we're just about ready to plate up. And there we have it. Well, even though there's quite a bit of variety, a lot of it's pretty basic. Baked chicken, mixed vegetables, sliced bread. There's a lot more interesting ways to eat all those things. Mashed potatoes are good, no doubt, and the cornbread was quite good. I guess the black-eyed peas would be the star of the show here. And they were fine. Like, I guess if you grew up with something like this, you'd probably be really nostalgic for it, but having it for the first time, if I never had it again, I probably wouldn't miss it, to be honest. Those oatmeal fudge bars are banging, though. Everything together, though, I'm gonna have to give it 4 out of 10.